we used to sing before we went into prison ministry. We would do that a cappella, talk about revolutionizing your witness, is to do that. I asked Phil Ackley to come up here and join me. My name is Geoffrey Plummer. I lead Outreach here at the church. Phil, we're just going to hop over here. Don't leap off. You know, you'll be all right over here. I'm not too bad with that. One of the things we've been doing is moving our church towards more outreach in the communities. So I asked Phil to come up here and be my next interview in this process. So Phil, you dedicate a lot of your time to distributing food and caring for others on a regular basis. Why do you think it's important to do that?
Well, you know, this makes me uncomfortable anyway up here, Dr. Plummer. But distributing food and helping others less fortunate than ourselves is really the most tangible way that we can put God on display in our society. There's an awful lot of people that are hurting that will never darken the door of our church, but how will they ever see the Lord? How will they ever see Jesus? And that's why.
That's excellent. So, Phil, you and I talked a little bit. You have a great history, your upbringing and stuff like that, missionary parents, et cetera, like that. I'm really curious, growing up as a missionary kid, or an MK, as we would say, how did you see them share Jesus with others? What did you learn from your parents in how to approach others with the gospel?
That's pretty complicated, but I would say, you know, obviously being born and then as an adolescent, I wasn't a witness per se, but I think the lasting impression was on a daily basis, weekly basis, just watching my father and my mother witness to every person, in every way, was a lasting impression. So I would say it's more of a continuation of what we should be doing, and has been a big impact on my life. But at that time, I wasn't very much of a participant. I was pretty young.
Right, yeah. I mean, and
very rebellious, but it's okay.
And it does happen over time. We have these examples in front of us, and then we learn in ourselves as we have these examples that become very visible to us. I can only imagine over time you'll remember back to some of the things that they have done.
Yeah, every week we'd walk about an hour or more to another village where Dad would preach or bring the gospel message, and walking with him on those was very impactful. And obviously now it's vivid, so it's very interesting. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
The other area that really interested me is that you are an active participant in trying to reach the Muslim community. I write a little bit about reaching a Muslim in my book, and it's not an easy process at all. You know, so why is that ministry really important to you, the Muslim ministry, and tell us a little bit about what you try to do there.
First of all, my wife and I, we minister to immigrants primarily. The United States government brings people from the Middle East, where there's been numerous wars and strifes, and Jacksonville is one of the prime ports that they land and give these people that are suffering in many different ways. Lots of them are translators and helpful to the military. They give them housing and food for 6 months. They land them in the airport and then leave. And can you imagine if you landed in Baghdad right now at the airport and they said, well, you got free housing and food for 6 months. You don't speak the language. You don't really know where to go. You don't know how to interact in supermarkets. Never seen a Publix before. How would you know what to do? So we intervene, and many of them are Muslim, and most of them speak Arabic. And I love to practice my Arabic with them, and that puts them at ease. The biggest challenge with Muslim community is really the Muslims themselves, because they grow up in community. They do not. It's not very much of an individualistic society. And the community decides what you do. And so being a Muslim is basically being born in a Muslim family in a Muslim country. There's no declaration of faith, you just do. So when they come here, they're outside of their comfort zone. It's very difficult to trust as you would expect anybody. They perceive the United States as being 100% Christian, like they are 100% Muslim in their country. And so they become very disenchanted with the amount of prevalent sin that they would call sin in our society. That's very common. Promiscuity and other things make them very hesitant in this society. So befriending them and getting to know them is a huge thing, and opens them up to the gospel. They are very interested. They're very devout people, and they love to talk about religion or God, and it's very easy to talk to them about God, and they're very open to that. Obviously, they're not saved, and they don't believe in the cross of Christ, that he died for them. So it's a big challenge, but to earn their trust, it takes on average 8 to 10 years of consistency in your part for them to become a Christian.
Right, and that's great. The things that I learned about people who I reached who have their own religion or settled in their own religion is they try to shut down the conversation straight away. That happens a lot when I witness to somebody and I say, hey, what about Jesus? And their answer is, I'm Catholic. That doesn't end the conversation, right? That you're Catholic. I'm a universalist too. So Muslim would be the same way. I'm Muslim. So how would you break through? I mean, it does take a lot of time, I will give that, but what would be your advice?
Well, I think one of the most common ways to break through their facade, because they are very devout, they have a very realistic, a very vivid imagination of hell. They are very fearful of hell, much more so than Christians or the Western society. And the need to not go to hell is imprinted on them, and they work most of their life to try to keep from going to hell. Obviously, Islam is not faith-based, it's a works-based, and so they're always wanting to know. Their idea is that there's a scale. God has a scale, and he has a good and a bad scribe on your right and left shoulder, and they record everything you do. And at the end of your days, the scale is up, and they find you good or bad, and if it's bad, you're in hell for life, and it's a scary thing. So one interesting way to break that down is, if you died today and you stood before God, what would you tell him that you deserve to get in? And most of the time, a lot of fear is given, and it really opens up a lot of doors. That's one way. There's others.
Yeah, and that's great. So how many of you will start witnessing to somebody about Jesus and immediately start talking about hell? I mean, fire and brimstone, those of us with Baptist backgrounds, we fire that up a lot. Thank you very much, Phil. I appreciate that. Give Phil an applause for me here for stepping into the breach.